Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tosh Customs, and today I get the pleasure of doing a little review and breakdown of my custom Punisher war machine. This is an SH Figuarts base, which is actually only the first or second time I've ever worked with this brand, which was super exciting. And I think we're able to do a lot of creative stuff here. The base for this figure is the War Machine Mark IV from the Avengers Infinity War. And I'll take my phone off the stand real quick so you can take a look at the box. So it was this guy. In terms of paint, you can see some red highlights, a relatively kind of like flat gunmetal gray with some chrome silver. You guys should be familiar with this. I would have liked to display him with all the blast effects, but the customer sent me the box but not the blast effects, so I don't get to pose him up in all his glory, but I think we will have more than enough to look at for this review. So starting with the Mark IV base, I think I will talk about the changes I made, and then I will talk about the paint job. So we actually did quite a bit when it comes down to it. The Mark IV is, although bulky, he's still a little bit on the slimmer side of War Machine figures, at least in terms of releases from SH Figuarts. And so I wanted to bulk him up a little bit. And so if I take him out of his, sort of put him into a little bit more of a neutral pose here, his shoulder pads were a little bit slim, and also his hands also felt a little bit slim. Like the configuration that they come in is not like with all his guns out. They come like very like everything's closed up, like his whole gauntlets kind of like expand with a bunch of guns and stuff. The SH Figuarts version doesn't have that. So everything's all closed up, and so it's very slim arms. And so customer and I were trying to figure out ways to bulk him up. And so I was looking around at other SH Figuarts, and I said, what if we take the Mark I figure and we swap some parts out, and that's how we bulk him up. And so it was a big investment because I had to find and purchase a Mark I. Thankfully, I found one that actually shipped incomplete, so it was a little bit cheaper than a brand new one, and it came with everything we needed. And so we didn't get all the accessories with it, but we weren't looking for the accessories. We were really just looking for body components. And so in terms of what we switched out, we took the shoulder pads off the Mark IV and swapped them with Mark I shoulder pads. And then I also took the gauntlets and switched out the gauntlets so that now we could get these big old beefy gauntlets with, camera shake, with the submachine gun or the machine gun configuration on the back of the arm, which was really important to us. Because, I mean, this is Punisher War Machine. He has to be kitted out, and I like how the Mark I looks a little bit more industrial. And so that gives us much more of a gritty Punisher vibe, which was the goal. In terms of accessories, there's really not too much to talk about. I mean, it's standard Mark IV stuff. Obviously, we have him with all his gear sort of expanded off his back. Later on, I'll swap them out. But he comes with the other normal backplate stuff, so the closed up machine gun, and let me get that to focus. Where's my focus lock? Here we go. Turn it to auto. He comes with his closed up machine gun, or, railgun, something. He has his closed up missile pods, and then he also has his closed up thruster fin pieces. I'll talk about the paint job in a little bit. And then in terms of hands, we just have the leftover hands from the figure. So we have a pair of closed fist ones. We have a pair of open palm ones with the red repulsor in there. We also have a pair of effect hands, which come with little pegs so that you can put like repulsor blast effects on them. And then we also come with more of like flying type hands, flying repulsor hands. So they just, the fingers are just straight out. So that really covers the accessories. There's not too much to talk about, so I'm just going to slide those into a pile off to the side for now. And let's look more at War Machine, or Punisher War Machine, I should say. And I'm going to bring my camera out a little bit for this. So, in terms of this guy, once we swapped out the parts, something to note, these shoulder pads from the Mark 1 are actually bigger than the like hinge that they're supposed to go on for the Mark 4. So I actually put super glue onto the tips and ends of the plates so that they have a little bit more of a grip. Like obviously they're not supposed to like this one is a little bit tighter, and so it can actually hold up while it's like posed. This one still flaps, but the big thing was that they were so big before that they wouldn't actually grip onto the swivel joint, and so they would just pop off when you moved the arm. So it was really just to tighten up that grip so that they wouldn't pop off and fly off everywhere. And while I'm saying this, a lot of these are getting in the way, so I will pop these off the back for now, and then we'll also be able to look at some of the back paint. So there was a little bit of an interesting challenge when painting this guy, and mind you, we part swapped and then we repainted. So it's not like I had to do too much sculpting. The only sculpting I had to do was to fill up the arc reactor in the middle, and that was actually pretty fun. So I got a piece of sculpt, I pressed it in there, I smoothed it out, and then what I did was I took like a little sculpting needle and I dragged it across the top. And then I would sort of, you know, rub and flatten it, and then I would drag it across the top again. And so I was able to like scrape off layers. And so now, as you can see, the sculpting is practically flush with the suit, which was super, super cool. And I think I did a pretty good job smoothing it out overall. That line there that you see is not actually sculpt line. Like if you feel it, it's completely smooth. That's some wear and tear paint that I did with some gunmetal brushing. So that was just to get some dirt onto the skull. So that is not an imperfection in the sculpt. It is smooth. That is paint that you're seeing. But coming back to the repaint here. So we had to find ways to add detail to a relatively, you know, blacked out War Machine suit. There's not too much detail going on for this guy, especially when you look at like the design from both the comic and as well as the Hot Toys Punisher War Machine figure. There's not too much going on, and so it was really a way to, you know, work with different blacks and different metals to make this guy pop. So the first thing I did was I dry brushed all the armor matte black, and I just had to black it out because obviously the original figure has, you know, like a lot more chrome bits and a lot of red and stuff like that all over the suit, and he's got a bunch of decals, and we had to strip those away. So right off the bat, made everything matte black. Then after that, what I did was I hand painted the white both on this skull and on this one. And the nice thing about this is, while you do have to kind of be precise about your lines, because, you know, you want it to look like a skull, and obviously this one was a little bit easier because we had the outline of the helmet already. And maybe I'll pop this head off so we can look at it a little bit more. This was nice because we already had the lines that we needed for the helmet. And so it was really just a matter of following that and then also using some matte black because we were blacking everything out to sort of clean up those edges. And so that actually worked out really well to get a nice clean paint there. And then what I did for the eyes was I painted it red, and then I also put some white in there. And so you get this artificial shine coming out of the eyes. And so that was really fun to do. And then after that, I just took a really fine tip brush, painted the nose as well as the skull lines in there. And then I came over with some gunmetal and just sort of dry brushed and dirtied up some of those edges there. So it's very much still a clean white and a very sharp contrast, but it doesn't look fresh and polished, and that was the goal. I didn't want this guy to look new. Punisher's been rampaging in this armor, you know, it's been dirtied up, he's been going hard, and so I wanted to be able to show that. So popping it gets finicky sometimes. I'll be honest, sometimes it's super easy and sometimes it's finicky. There we go, we got it on. So now looking at the rest of the figure here. So we blacked out the rest of it. I painted the skull. Once again, just took a very small detailed brush, brushed it in, and then came over with some little gunmetal to weather it up. For the suit, I came with a chrome silver, and I dry brushed all the edges with the chrome silver. And so You know, if we zoom in, you can see some of that silver edge weathering coming across all the different panel lines here and stuff. But matte black to a chrome silver is a very, you can see all the weathering, is a very, very harsh contrast. And I actually, and even though, you know, it was kind of what we were going for, I didn't like it too much. It was just way too harsh for what we were looking for. And so once I dry brushed it with that silver chrome, what I did was I actually then proceeded to brush this whole guy with gunmetal, all the matte black as well as the chrome silver. And what that did was, like, matte black is a very dry color, if that's the best way to describe it. It really doesn't have any sheen to it. It doesn't reflect light well. It almost has a chalky look to it. And so when you put that chalky look up against that silver, you know, in some cases it looks good, but when you're talking about a full metal suit, it makes it look a little bit brittle almost. And so by coming over with that gunmetal paint, when you dry brush it, actually doesn't really look like a color. It looks more like a tint, at least with the gunmetal paint I have. And so you know, everything is still very black. You know, this is not looking brighter in a way, but now we have a nice metallic sheen over it. And that helps blend that metallic weathering against that, you know, more matte black, you know, with that gunmetal tint to it. And so that really gave it a much colder, more metal look, and I would say, you know, a little bit more premium in that way. And so now we have these really, really nice smooth shine going over all of it. And so I was really, really happy with that. The next thing that I did was then I said, okay, everything is just kind of, you know, now everything looks like it's all metal now. So how do we make the metal interesting? Well, the first thing I did was I broke up some components with some chrome silver. I put some chrome silver detailing in there. This line panel before was just gunmetal. I made it silver, as well as these elbow parts silver, and then I went over it with some gunmetal as well to just sort of tone it down a tad. And that just helped add a little bit more silver and kind of break up the gunmetal. You know, we put it where like the major joints kind of meet in certain areas. And that just helps break up the figure a little bit visually. And, you know, when you're looking at it, it's not something that you're really going to notice too much. But when you have so many big chunks of this black gunmetal, you know, armor, it becomes very monotonous, and it actually becomes kind of tough to look at in that way, and it's hard to see those details. And so having those little bits of silver in there just kind of break things up, allow you to appreciate the different segments a little bit more. Something before I go too far, what I want to note is that because we switched out with the Mark I gauntlets, there's this really big joint gap in there, as you guys can see there. There's a really big joint gap because the Mark IVs like totally engulf that part of the joint, and so it hides it. But this has this open slot for the elbow joint. So what I ended up doing is I took, I believe these were elbow pads from the Mark I, and so they actually happen to be a perfect size to slot right in there. And they don't hinder the articulation. We still get about 90, and I think if you bend one before the other, whoops, sorry, I'm trying to put the hand back on. If you bend one before the other, I can get above 90. Yeah, it's this one first and then this one. There we go. And now we get above 90 there. So I use those elbow pads just to fill in that gappage there. And I actually think it turned out pretty good. You really can't tell that they're there, and it fits in very, very nicely. But anyways, so we brought in those silver, also put some silver bits into the gauntlets, and that just helps break up, you know, all that black gunmetal and helps you just kind of differentiate and see the different layers and helps you appreciate the angles a little bit more. Besides that, we also have some nice little detailing. So one of the things is we have the skulls on the leg there. Hold on, let me see if I can focus the camera a little bit more. There we go. They're a little bit faint, But I just made a bunch of little white circles, put some eyeballs in there, and also dragged down where like the little skull mouth should be. And then after that, I came over it with some gunmetal and just faded them out a little bit. So we get those, we get that nice body count on the leg there. And then as well, also put, the 000 labeling what mark this armor is. And so it's mark 0 of the Punisher War Machine armor. So we have that on the arm, same thing. Did it in white and then dirtied it up with some gunmetal just to fade it out a little bit more. And once again, as you can see, because gunmetal acts more as like a tint, we can still tell it's white, but it's a little bit faded, versus if we went over with a black or something like that, we would actually start to cover up some of that white paint. I didn't want to cover anything up. I just wanted to reduce its brightness a little bit. So, that's really the gist of the figure in terms of the steps we took to repaint it. So much of this was, kind of just pre-planning and thought in terms of, how am I going to get this to be successful? And then, finding ways to make that paint coat look really, really premium in that way. Another thing I did was to help bring out some of the depth. I actually took some gloss black and dropped some gloss black into some of these cracks here. And you can see that shine, through the thighs. We have some in the legs right here and some of these deep divots. You can see that reflection coming back at you. We have it in the calves as well, like right in here. You can see it's darker. And so there's a lot of little bits of venting and stuff, and we have them in the shoulders as well. You can see right in these lines right here. And so that was just to add a little bit more depth and just something a little bit extra to look at. Once again, if everything's just that flat metal, you really kind of start to lose the layers and the definition because everything blends together. And so taking some of that gloss black and using it to also just break up the design a little bit, allow some of the other panels to, look like they sit higher than others. And so that was really, really helpful. Coming to the accessories that we had on the back before, same steps, painted it matte black, dry brushed it with chrome silver, and then came over it with gunmetal. Most of this guy got a very, very standard paint job. There's not too much to talk about it. I did, however, decide to paint the joints, dry brush it in a little bit more of a chrome silver versus everything else. This very, very, matte black gunmetal. These arms I wanted to make a little bit more silver. Likewise, these arms I wanted to make a little bit more silver versus more of the darker black gunmetal look here. And so that decision also gets reflected in the closed up portions. These arms now, just like these, a little bit more chrome silver, while the the closed up packs are more matte black. The reason I chose to do that is, once again, just visually, it's a little bit more interesting because if we have all these pieces running just matte black to matte black to matte black, there's not, just not enough to look at. It becomes relatively, let me raise the camera here, becomes relatively uninteresting. So instead, we have a little bit of that silver in there, and you can see the difference here between the black versus like that silver shine that we're getting up top. And so, it's really the difference right there. And so, just really at the end of the day, it's how do you take something that is a little bit more, a little bit more monochromatic and make it look a little bit flashier, a little bit more interesting. Also really like the dry brush that I was able to do on the back of these with just some of that highlight silver over those raised hexagons. I think that was super, super fun, and I like that detail. I don't know functionally what those back ends are supposed to do, but I think it's super cool. Since I talked about it earlier, I will also load him up with like his sort of, I guess, closed pack configuration here. And I think a cool thing that SH Figuarts did, or I guess Bandai did maybe, is that none of these parts overlap each other. Like all of them just meet at clean edges with each other. And I think that's a super, super nice detail because you can put them on in any order you want, and all the pieces fit together. So you're not tied to, a specific order to get all that loaded up. And it's so clean. Like everything lines up so clean. And granted, I realize, props to the Marvel concept artists and designers who designed it originally. But in terms of it coming into a toy form, they really broke those segments up and lined up all the pegs super, super nicely. So everything fits together, and I thought that, some things would sit over each other, but you can see here, like even though we have this outer fin piece, there's a nice divot in there, and so these thruster pieces, you can just, if I can wiggle it out, because I can't get much grip on these, honestly, when they're in there. But everything lines up. You don't need to, they're not restricted by any of them. None of them overlap each other. I think that's super, super fun. I didn't detail any of these like little lenses and stuff that he has on the missile launchers because I love that pearl blue and that metallic red that's already on there. And so I was looking at it and I was like, why fix something that's not broken? It's just such a great color, a great sheen on it already. I also put some gloss black into the, let's see if I can get my camera to focus on it, into the barrel of the gun here. You can see the shine a little bit as I put it into the light right there. So yeah, both gun barrels have a little bit of that, there you go, you can see it right there, that glossy black inside the barrels of them. So you get a little bit more depth, or at least the illusion of depth into it. So yeah, this was just a fun repaint, honestly. Took, I guess there's some sculpt work in there, pretty minimal sculpt work. Most of it was paint work. And I really, really enjoyed working with this figure base. It was a little bit of a challenge to figure out how to swap out the parts and what was safe to do and what wasn't, just because I really don't work with this brand very often. But I'm super, super proud with how he turned out. And I love all the articulation that he has, including like these, they're not butterfly joints, but they pop out so that your arms can get a little bit more movement, and it gives way for the shoulder pads to have a little bit more flexibility so that they're not so uptight against I guess like the armor top, whatever these are. If these are shoulders, I guess these are his lats, maybe. But yeah, super, super fun to work with, a great learning experience. And, I don't generally paint this much metal and sort of, I guess, in this flavor, you could say, very often. So super, super enjoyable. And I think he just looks awesome. I can't wait to take some pictures of him and put him in a bunch of really cool poses because this guy rocks on camera. There's just so much nice contrast between the metals and the whites and the reds. So yeah, really, really dig this guy. But anyways, without further ado, thank you for taking a look at this video. I know it's not technically, what I normally put on the channel in terms of the workload and sort of the design aspects of it. There's not a huge, cool art lesson to learn out of this video either. I guess besides, find ways to make your monochrome more interesting. But I feel like we talk about that a lot. So yeah, thanks for checking it out. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the, camera shake. Sorry, I knocked my camera there, my bad. Please subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to see more work in progress photos and stuff like that of what I'm working on, and keep just a little bit more up to date with what I'm doing, please go check me out on Instagram. My username is Tosh_customs. I have my username in the description of this video, as well as a direct link in the About section on my channel page. So please go check me out there. And yeah, I appreciate your support in any form it comes in. And I think I've done my dues in terms of channel plugging. So thank you all for watching once again. I hope you enjoyed, and I will catch you later.